Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, I'm here with Ian. How you going? Honestly,
not really good, mate.
Yeah, and look, today we're talking. This is about breathing oxygen, and we're talking about addictions today. Now, you have been a highly addictive person all your life, haven't you?
Like starting off early teens, pre-teens.
Yeah, and what was it then? What was it, cigarettes?
Cigarettes initially, yeah.
Yeah, and then what?
Look, alcohol prior to that as well, it just occurred to me, you know.
So how old?
4, 5, 6.
4, 5, 6 years old, okay. And then drugs?
Around 11, 12, again, 13.
Yeah. Sex?
Rampant.
Yeah.
From early. Like not so much through school years, but like into the 20s.
Into the 20s.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a very important thing here, guys, is that people who are breathing oxygen still, addictions have actually been their lifeline. So I spoke to you about this early, when I was a healer, about how important the addictions have been to your life, and you felt every time you would open something up to me about some of the things that you were doing in your past, I would just say that, well, that's good, it's kept you here, and you'd feel calm because I wouldn't judge what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now, you're having a really hard time, and it's been March.
Yeah, it's been a few months, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a few months. So when you're having a hard time and you've got your addictive-based personality, what is the thing that a person who may not breathe oxygen and end up committing suicide do? What do they do?
What I've pretty much done, Jace, is like I've disconnected.
So you isolate, you disconnect.
Yeah, isolated. Like not reaching out to anyone, not talking to anyone. Like being really guarded.
Yeah. So not wanting anyone to know where you're at. So this is the standard rule for a person who is still feeling like he's 1 foot in the grave.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting, like not seeing any future to a point, like not being able to see very far ahead.
Yeah. We went for a walk the other day, and I told you your 4 things that you need to do to create your life. And they're scary.
They are, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Because the one thing that you're probably most frightened about is giving up the cigarettes, yeah?
That's been like a real kicker, actually, like lately, in thinking I want to do it, and like not having had some like half-assed attempts at doing it.
Yeah. And so when you have that half-assed attempt and you're like, I'm going to do it today, and you don't do it, what actually happens in your psyche?
Look, I just think, well, yeah, you're full of it, and it's empty words, and like there's no real basis of want,
So basically it's a way that you can be cruel to yourself.
Yeah, it allows me that for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so And then it can give that part, that suicide psychological part, a chance to take control of your brain.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Like, it's just, there's just another reason. Like, you're hopeless.
Yeah. And that's what people do. I've had quite a few people, especially the start of this year has been quite difficult for a lot of people this year, simply because of the time that we're in, COVID. It's higher suicide rates than ever before in our time right now. People don't know this because everyone's focusing on COVID. They're not actually understanding there's so many problems that are happening. And did you know that Canberra is actually the highest suicide rate in Australia?
I'd heard that,
Canada? Yeah. I know this because I was being a therapist. I'd have people in certain areas tell me these statistics, and Canberra was voted the most livable city in the world years ago, and I knew at that time it was the highest suicide rate per capita in the world, simply because I was seeing someone came to see me who was doing the mop-ups, and she was dealing with 3 mop-ups a week, and there were 3 companies, so I didn't know how many people were killing themselves in Canberra. It's pretty high stats for the companies that are here. So what we don't know, and they're not shown, these they're not in the paper. They're quite often the people, because there can be addicts, having the addiction and all of those sorts of things. Like, no one would know you, Ian, right, if you committed suicide.
No.
Right? The people who care about you know, but you wouldn't be in the paper.
No, it doesn't get reported.
It doesn't get reported. So this is so common, guys. And if you're watching this and you're having this feeling, I implore you to get some help, because this is the worst thing that you can do. I know addictions are here to keep you alive. There's a guy called Rob who was highly addicted to alcohol that I've worked with, and he was on his way out, and everything's changed. He doesn't touch it anymore, and he's got a really strong focused life now, simply because I was in the way of his basically his death sentence, and I've been in the way of many people's death sentences for years. And like with you, Ian, I know that you're a heavier, like it feels like a heavier case for you, because it's like you're on a thin thread sometimes. And this is how you're feeling right now. And it's really important to be okay knowing that you're on that thin thread. Yeah. Like this morning I said, you're coming to do a podcast today. You said no, and you got annoyed with me.
Yeah.
And I said, you're fucking coming here, right? Because you're not going to get out of this. And for some reason, you just listened to me.
Mate, I knew this as soon as I said it. Like on point,
Because look, our conversations are not about you.
Yeah, it's a bigger thing.
It's a bigger thing. I just want to utilise you as a catalyst, because you feel like you have no meaning in your life. You've never felt like you've had any meaning.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of the belief system, and like that aspect of it doesn't matter, I don't matter, things don't matter, like the meaning, for sure is
but imagine this, someone listening to this right now who was going to take their life and they didn't, simply because they feel where you're at. They understand where they're at, and then they get an opportunity. Instead of choosing to take their life, they choose to reach out, right? And that's what this is all about, because most people just isolate and stop connecting, and then eventually something tripwires, and then I've had enough. Right? I know you've been on the edge many times around this, and something inside of you chooses not to.
Yeah. I thought I was beyond it, Jace, too,
But it comes back, and this is what it's about, is that there's got to be something underneath that addiction part that's still holding on to the cigarettes, that's still holding on to something that you haven't solved.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that something doesn't know whether it's safe enough to be without that addiction.
Yeah, I wonder, Jace, like about like the disassociation the addiction brings.
Yes.
Like, which I felt like for me, it felt like it just would separate me from like being in the guts of everything, you know.
Yeah.
Like even though it was still there and even though it was still heavy, it was just like a separation or like a disassociation from like what was going on
in
like
your
in the
head.
head.
Yeah. And guys, you got to listen to this. This is why, right? You cannot cheer up that feeling. You have to acknowledge that feeling for where it is and what it's doing, because the moment you try and cheer someone like Ian up, you'll lose him, right? There's just no chance. This is why the model doesn't work so well, because the model doesn't know how to turn you around in this situation. So they just want to listen. They want to figure out what to do, but people don't know what to do with people like you.
No.
If they did, if there was a system in place, then there'd be less suicides.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right? So I have logic and reason to this, that the system's not working because that's where you found me.
Yeah.
Right?
After the psychologist road and all that sort of thing, psychiatrists,
It wasn't working, so you found someone to actually help you change, and still you're not out of the woods yet. Because I think, guys, suicide is not something that it just disappears from some people. It's something that you have to carry. And if you're that person who feels like you have to carry it, then you've got a couple of choices. Every time that you know you could do X, Y, and Z to get yourself better, Ian, you don't even start with a small part of the X, do you?
No.
Right?
No, it's like this is the big thing, and like there's no like even consideration of starting on a small part. Like it sort of seems like, and I make it insurmountable.
Yeah. And so I think personally, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think that insurmountable part is actually living. I think it's insurmountable that you could even conceive of actually living and being okay here on this planet.
Yeah, there's a fear involved there, Jace, actually, like in making a go of things and like getting things done and like being okay.
Yeah. And so that's how it is for some people, this insurmountable feeling that it's not about actually death. That's surmountable. That's actually surmountable and relieving. Whereas life is insurmountable. And I think what happens for you, you tell me if I'm wrong, E, is the moment you feel like there could be some clarity and some calmness, and there are some very simple ways in which you can get yourself on track, that insurmountable responsibility to live in it overwhelms you.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty spot on, Jace. Like it can creep in or it can hit really hard.
Yeah. So, and when it creeps in, you don't know it.
No.
And then when it hits really hard, it can be something that's just happened. What is it that hits? Or is it just an overwhelming feeling or a thought that hits you?
Just generally a feeling and a thought that'll come in, you know. Sometimes a circumstance of like what might be further on down the track. Like there'll be a little indicator. Usually, it's always negative. The indicator, you know.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of a different spin around this. You know, my gorgeous little daughter, who makes you cry and makes you feel good about yourself. I think there's more insurmountable fear around feeling good and having good reactions, because I know you've spoken to me about this. Every time you've come over, let's say, for a cup of tea or come and had some breakfast, your addictions have gotten worse afterwards.
Yeah. I'm really not sure what that's about, like Jace, other than it's like a feeling of it's just sort of not right, and like I don't know about other folks, mate, you know, but like there's a thing of like undeserving everything, not deserving connection, or, you know.
Yeah. So I remember the first time that you sort of connected with Charlotte. She was really, really little, and there was a barbecue for my birthday, and we were out and about, and she had a meltdown. The first thing she did is she put her arms out to you. And you picked her up.
That, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And I know you would have melted down afterwards and not coped with that responsibility of someone giving a shit, like really caring. So I think what we do you tell me if I'm wrong, if someone really cares and really cares about you, you're worried about maybe your past circumstances or the responsibility of that care, what would that mean? If you actually had someone really, really give a shit permanently in your life, like really be there for you in your life and have you matter.
Yeah, interesting, Jace. Like on the responsibility aspect, it's like I generally feel like on that aspect that there's nothing to give. Like there's nothing to kind of give back that is kind of real.
Yeah. So there's a real emptiness is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Yeah. Or people could like really see what's going on.
Yeah, if people saw what was really going on inside, they would just reject you. Yeah?
Yeah, and rightly so.
Yeah. And that, guys, is, I think, the biggest problem, is that I think, Ian, that maybe if people really got to see you, I think maybe, just maybe, people might accept you, because I think we all go through this feeling that we're not going to be accepted with our darkness.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
And I think for you, when you've got that and it's on extreme, it isolates itself and says, no one in this world will accept my thoughts, feelings and understanding of the world. The way I think, the way I look, the way I comprehend my thoughts and all of those things that go on, that is what takes us away from this world.
Yeah, like that's the sort of thing, like if I talk about like thoughts smashing, that's the types of one that does, you know, that's the kind of common thing, you know, that there's, you know, like nothing to give back, there's no place.
Yeah. And so, guys, this is really, really important to understand, is that if you are helping someone who is suicidal, or you've got those feelings yourself, those deepest, darkest feelings and thoughts are the ones that you've got to actually, if you're in them, you need to communicate those deepest, darkest ones to someone who is actually going to be able to hold space for those things. Now, you've got to be with them yourself, not run away. And I think that's why the addiction comes in. It says, I'll smoke that thought away, or I'll drink that thought away, or I'll eat that thought away.
Yeah, the smoking is it's a time filler, it's a distraction for that moment. Yeah, for sure.
So you see how, Ian, essential it is to keep you alive. But then it gets to a point, right? It gets to a point is, when can you let it go? Right? When can you because eventually, like this, when you're turning the other side, it's a habit that you're used to, and then we get frightened of losing the habit. as opposed to it being something that is sitting there. So those thoughts become habitual, and then we entertain them. That becomes habitual. We do the same things, which become habitual to validate it. So how do we do something how do we do something different to actually break that habit and ritual?
I know that I have to keep showing up, and that it sort of means to sort of change the things of isolating. It means finding those people that I can, that you feel safe with, to be able to say, hey, I'm not doing great, There's the putting aside of I think, what I believe in those habits,
Yeah.
It makes sort of sense in me to sort of chip away at them as something that is not necessarily true,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the
and
thing.
getting the help to do that too, which I don't do,
So that's what you do, is you go and pull back and pull back and pull back to the point where you're at the brink again. Then you run a cycle, right? Because you do get help and then you push it away. So, and maybe this is what you're doing if you're listening to this right now, or you see people and you see the hope in that maybe they'll get over the line this time. And I think about this with you as maybe this time you'll make that decision. And then I watch you go through your loop. We spoke about this just before we got on here. And I said, he came here under duress, didn't really want to come, and I said, you're coming, and I forced him. And then somehow he shows up, and showed up today. And the fight, and this is what it feels like, guys, the fight is not over until the swords get put down. And we don't know when that's going to happen for you, Ian. But the thing that we don't want to do is have that sword and draw it into your belly and actually take your own life. And that can happen at any point in time with this sort of feeling that comes along.
Yeah. There's a lot of conflict with that that goes around too. It's not as sort of saying before, it's not cut and dried, and it's not clean for me.
No.
Still,
And I agree. I think there's still, even when you make choices that are going to be helpful for you, it's going to still feel like there's blood on that sword, even though there's no blood there. Right? And it's what I mean by that is that there's still going to be this want to do the things that are going to be hard, they're going to hurt, they're going to make problems, and to create blood on the sword, even though it's not there. And the sword actually represents your mental mind. That's what the sword represents from a metaphoric perspective, guys, is that what do we do when there's blood on that sword where the head is looping and it feels like it's never going to stop.
Yeah, and that's, I think, mate, too, where the addictions factor into, because you're doing harm as well. You do know that you're doing harm, And, and I think that's where the real attachment to the cigarettes might be too, on that point, is...
So it might be addiction to harm to some degree, but not the whole deal. So it's all sort of related.
I think so, yeah. I feel so.
Yeah. Well, guys, Ian, thanks for coming in and me forcing your hand today.
Yeah, mate, I knew that time.
Yeah, you heard my voice, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, as soon as when you said you wanted to do a podcast, and the way I reacted, and as I was answering, I'm thinking, don't say this, Ian.
Yeah. You got a bit of a mouthful from me today.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't too much, Jace.
Yeah, but it was a clear one to say, come on, you want to keep doing this, or you want to show up? You're going to make excuses, or you're going to show up? And that was my language today. I knew I could layer that with Ian today. I wasn't going to... if I needed to be soft, I would have been soft, but I was pretty strong with you today, wasn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. It didn't feel like it was...
Yeah. Well, strong in the way I am.
Yeah.
I'm not come on, you silly bastard. I don't do that sort of thing. So, guys, look, if you're in that place where where this made a lot of sense to you, the addictions around breathing oxygen, staying alive, suicide, and you think someone that you know could hear this, or you really enjoyed what we are bringing to the table right now, please like and review this. This is really, really important. I really want to help people be able to continue to breathe oxygen. I have been told many, many times that the only reason why I am here is because of you, Jason. This is sort of relentless on my path. I seem to collect people who are suicidal, have suicidal tendencies, and I've had them in my life as well, so that's probably the reason, and I'm past them now. And I know I can help because I've had those feelings, thoughts and desires in my life as well. So thank you so much. So if you want to see us, the website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Please like and review this. Give someone a hand if they're feeling like they can't be here and they have those addictions. Just know, don't push too hard on those levers because they might just be using them for a survival mechanism. Thanks, Ian, for coming in.
Yeah, thanks, Jace.
And thank you guys for listening.